One of the most common threads this year is the one of value, which I've already spoken about, where people are telling us that they're less likely to go for brands for the sake of it, but they're actually looking for value. How does this, in your view, change the landscape for brands, or has it changed the landscape in the past year, in your view?
Thanks, Moniz. We've certainly seen that the consumer is definitely under pressure, right? And I mean, we can see it in the businesses that we've helped that are in the food business. So we've seen guys selling reused oil as an example. Now, if you work in the starter shop market, you know that oil is one of the biggest products, right? And again, they really look at the brand. You know, they don't, and I don't know if I can say brand names here, but they really look at the brand. But what they've started doing, we've seen our businesses that do fish and chips are selling a lot of the reuse. Now, this is an old concept, right? But we've definitely seen an increase now, which shows you that the consumer is under pressure, right? And value is actually what they're looking for, and they sort of taken a second look at brand affinity, which is consistent with what your report found. So we've seen this definitely in the market, and that's just one example that I'm giving.
Have you seen it, Brian, and how has this change really occurred in the spaces that you play over the past year?
So for us, it's mostly what we've seen is more brands that we used to sell a lot. We're not actually not being ordered that much on our platform. Smaller or more competitor brands that are maybe cheaper are what are being requested by more of the spaza shops and the informal businesses that order through our platform. So I think people just need to stretch the rands that they've got. So that's why they're looking at that versus the brand loyalty that we used to see previously.
Right. Sure, Jessica. And I mean, Jessica, on your end, it's also, I mean, a lot on the B2B side as well. So are you seeing people stocking different types of brands than what they once did?
Oh, for sure. It's interesting, actually. We do see a distinction between different categories, where, for example, in the grains or sugar category, fighter brands are shooting up at the expense of established brands. So, and that's a hard trend that we see throughout. Whereas, for example, in the energy drink category, the brand is really important, and no amount of discounting will make you buy a different brand that does not associate or does not make you feel proud of that specific brand. So definitely a distinction between different categories, the likes of sugar, oil that were mentioned earlier, grains, very, very value dependent right now. Quality remains a key factor. So there's no compromise on quality. However, we see the consumer and thus our business owner being much more open to stocking fighter brands as opposed to previously the brand was everything.
Right. And Thabo, on your end, I mean, I know that you deal differently with the customer,
Yeah.
but on your end, what have you seen as the one sort of major change in this sort of value versus brand within the fashion space?
In the fashion space, I'm not going to disregard pricing. Pricing is really, really key in the fashion space. But then one thing that I've seen, and amongst other competitive brands, is there's a huge reliance on equity. There's a lot of equity job which was done in the previous year and right now in the first half of the year. So I think a lot of fashion brands are reverting to a lot of building a lot more equity on their end in order to convince those people to come back to them. Because at the end of the day, when you look at us, we're pretty much a bit more competitive in terms of pricing with our competitors. So we relied a bit more on driving more equity in order to pull these people in, and that's how we've been doing it in the past year and this first half of the year. But it's actually quite interesting on our end. And yeah, I don't want to say a bit more. So yeah, I've seen a bit more on equity, yeah.